Hello everyone, I'm Luz Eliza Diandaya, and now let's proceed to the Hammond's Goal Attainment Model. There are 5 steps for determining whether a curriculum has achieved its objectives. First, isolating the program or part of the curriculum to be evaluated. And second, defining the descriptive variables. Third, stating objectives in behavioral terms. Fourth, assessing the behavioral described in the objectives. And lastly is analyzing results to arrive at conclusions about the objectives. Now let's move on to Parlett and Hamilton's illuminative model. This model aims to illuminate the audience's understanding of a curriculum or program. Illuminated evaluation is less restricting the traditional evaluation, and it is more concerned with description and interpretation than measurement and prediction. So now let's proceed to the chemist surrogate experience model. Based on the view that curriculum cannot be measured in precise and objective ways, it requires a broad evaluation involving the interaction of many variables. In curriculum evaluation through assessment, learning assessment, there are 2, which is the subtopic and strategy. In subtopic, it contains the achieved learning outcomes and the strategies or tools to assess the curriculum. In the strategy, it contains the level of hierarchy and the concept web. In the expected outcome for the achieved learning outcomes, here are the level of hierarchy. On the top is the performance, and the second is the understanding, and the third is the process, and lastly is the knowledge. We have gone a long way in understanding, interpreting, and applying the concept of curriculum development. We will continue to understand that curriculum can be evaluated right in the teacher's classroom. Finding out in the planned, written, and implemented curriculum are functioning as intended in the assessment of learning is very crucial. How does the teacher know that the students have learned from what is being taught? Many educational practitioners agree that the measure of one's teaching is indicated by what the students have learned. The teacher cannot claim that he or she has been taught if the students have not learned anything. Assessment of learning is an evaluation process that tells whether the intended learning outcomes through the learning outcomes, and learning outcomes can be measured through the use of different assessment tools. And now let's proceed to the achievement learning outcomes. Achieved learning outcomes is an outcomes-based education as a product of what have been intended in the beginning of the teaching learning process. Indicators of the learning outcomes which are accomplished are called achieved learning outcomes. Standards or competencies are used as the indicators and measures of these outcomes. In the achieved learning outcomes level of hierarchy, the meaning of the performance which is on the top is the products or performance which can be used as an evidence of learning. And the next is the understanding, or it means big concepts or ideas, and the process is the skills that students use based on facts and information for making meaning and understanding. And the knowledge means factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge, and metacognition. The knowledge, process, and understanding are learning outcomes. Students who can show that they have gained knowledge can apply such knowledge have achieved the learning outcomes. Level 4 of the learning outcomes can be assessed through performance or the product. These learning outcomes can best be done through the use of authentic evaluation. Let's also proceed to the strategies, tools, assess the curriculum. Assessment strategies are the structure through which student knowledge and skills are assessed. Finding out what the students know and can do requires multiple sources of information and different types of assessment. The key is to match the learning of the assessment tool, and the selection of the strategy is determined both by what is to be assessed and the reasons or purposes for the assessment The phase of the learning process at which the teacher and the students are working affects the selection of the assessment strategy. And also, the tools used, as one tool may be unsuitable for different purposes. In the strategies or tools to assess the curriculum, there are 7 examples of assessment strategies. First is the paper and pencil strategy. Second is the performance-based strategy. Third is the observational strategy. Number 4 is the personal communication strategy. Number 5 is the oral strategy. Number 6 is the reflective strategy. And lastly, this number 7, combination of strategies. First, let's move on to the paper and pencil strategy. It contains 2, the essay and the select response. The essay. It is a writing used to assess student understanding and or how well students can analyze and synthesize information. A student constructs a response to a question, topic, or a brief statement, and it provides the student with the opportunity to communicate his or her reasoning in a written response. And the select response is an assessment in which the student is used to identify the correct answer. It is also a common use procedure for gathering formal evidence about student learning, especially in memory, recall, and comprehension. Let's also proceed to the performance-based strategy. It also contains 2, the performance task and the exhibit or demonstration. The performance task means the assessment which requires a student to demonstrate skills or proficiency by asking them to create, produce, or perform. May be an observation of a student or group of students performing a specific task to demonstrate skills or knowledge through open-ended or hands-on activities. The exhibit or demonstration means a performance in which a student demonstrates individual achievement through the application of specific skills and knowledge. It is also used to assess progress in tasks that require students to be actively engaged in an activity. Example is performing an experiment. Let's also move on to the number 3, which is the observational strategy. Observational strategy or the observation is a process of systematically viewing and recording student behavior for the purpose of making programming decisions. Permits the entire teaching process by assisting the teacher in making the decisions required in effective teaching. Now let's move on to the number 4, which is the personal communication strategy. It also contains 2, the conference and the interview. The conference means a formal or informal meeting between or among the teacher and student and parent. It also a clear focus on learning for discussions. The interview means a form of conversation in which all parties, the teacher, students, and parent, increase their knowledge and understanding. Let's now move on to the oral strategy. It contains the question and answer. The question are posed by the teacher to determine if the students understand what is being or has been presented or texted, thinking, generate ideas or problem solve. In answers, to provide which requires students to verbalize their knowledge, select and present samples of finished work and organize thoughts in order to present a summary of learning about the topic. And the second to the last, which is the reflective strategy, it also contains 2, the self-assessment and the response journal. In the self-assessment, it is the process of gathering information and reflecting on one's own learning. It is also the student's own assessment of personal progress in knowledge, skills, process, or attitudes. And it leads a student to a greater awareness and understanding of himself or herself as a learner. And the response journal, it provides a frequent, written, reflective response to a material that a student is reading, viewing, listening, or discussing. Move on to the last, which is the combination of strategies. it contains the portfolio. It is a purposeful collection, samples of a student's work that is selective, reflective, and collaborative. It also demonstrates the range and depth of a student's achievement, knowledge, and skills over time and across a variety of contexts. Has a student's involvement in selection of portfolio material as part of the process. It is a visual presentation of a student's accomplishments, capabilities, strengths, weakness, and progress over a specific time. Thank you for listening and watching. God bless.